Josh?
Josh McGinn, Kansas Department of Agriculture. I'm here to introduce a bill on behalf of the Division of Water Resources related to notifications for water right applications for landowners and some other statutory updates. The RS number is 26 RS 2842.
Okay. Are there any questions at this moment? Seeing none, we'll move forward. Thank you, Josh.
All right, thank you.
We have 10 meeting days prior to turnaround. So we're going to move quickly and fill time periods in this committee to the best of our ability. This bill, Josh, I hope to hear about somewhere in the third week, probably. Take testimony. Are there any other bills? Gary?
Yes, I think on behalf of KDHE is HB 2424. And it has to do with licensing people that drill wells and put the pumps in.
Are there any other introductions? Seeing none, we'll move forward. On our agenda today, our first presenter will be Dawn Bueller, Chairperson of the Kansas Water Authority. Well, boy, you girls, excuse me. We're going to welcome Connie from the Kansas Water Office.
She pulled rank.
I think I'm on now. Thank you. Yeah, I couldn't wait. I can't sit there and not get to chat with you guys. It's good to see you all back. I'm, as always, a fan of the House Water Committee. Again, Connie Owen, Director of the Kansas Water Office. And Chairman Minix had asked me to provide a couple of updates. So we're not going to go back over who's the Water Office, what do we do, all that. You all know all those things. So just a couple things to highlight since session ended last spring. And one quick reference, which is, it is certainly not minimal, but I don't have slides for it, is the task force that Co-Chair Minix is running with Co-Chair Senator Titus. And they have begun their work, and I am on the task force as an ex officio, as is Earl Lewis with the Division of Water Resources, and Kate Gleason with KDHE, or is it Will Carr? So, okay, thank you. So they have begun their work, and then the affiliated work group has also begun to meet a few times. The task force, as I understand it, will not be meeting during legislative session, but the work group will have meetings, and I believe their first one, even though it's not officially noticed out yet, I think will be January 22nd in Overland Park. So the two topics I'd like to focus on today for the committee be the Tuttle Creek Lake water injection dredging demonstration and the HB 2302 grants. So those are the topics that I'll discuss with you today. Just a little bit of background regarding the water injection dredging demonstration, or WID. The authorization for that federally comes from the Flood Control Act of 1938. There were a number of different pathways that the federal money came through, but the state money that was provided was $2 million through the State Water Plan Fund through the Kansas Water Office to contribute to the project. And a huge thank you to this committee and to the legislature for providing that money over a couple of years, because without that, this project could never have gotten off the ground. So we have project managers from the Corps of Engineers and Josh Olson, who is our project management specialist with the Water Office. The objectives of this demonstration are to answer questions. This is a little non-traditional. The point of doing this is not to immediately dredge to a certain elevation or remove a certain amount of sediment. It's to test the technology and see if indeed it is a successful dredging technology, because although it is successful in harbors and waterways, it's never been used in a reservoir setting before now. So the kinds of questions that are listed there, that is why we're doing the project, is to try to answer how much sediment can this technology move, how fast can it move it, what will it cost, what are the downstream effects, and if we can answer those questions, then it will have been fully successful. So we will know if this is a viable option going forward. As you can see on the graphic there, it's a depiction of how the dredge is on top of the water. But this particular picture shows the bathymetric measurements that take place. So the Water Office does bathymetric measurements. There are also sediment and water quality monitoring that's happening. So we can actually tell what is going on the bottom of the lake in response to the dredging. The demonstration schedule, there are 3 demonstration periods that are part of this project. One was this past September, and it was for 10 total days, September 17 to 27, and that included 200 hours of active dredging. That's the schedule that should be for each of the 3 periods, where there will be 10 days of dredging, and it assumes 20 hours of dredging per day. So the second session is scheduled for sometime this spring, and those dates have yet to be announced. And that will also be calibrated and planned depending on what has been learned from the first session. And likewise, the third session in the summer, there may be changes and adjustments made to that based on what's learned from last fall and from this spring. The actual dredging took place. It began on September 17, about 11:45 a.m., and that's a picture of the dredge, and there is a tug behind it. There's a tugboat that has to move it around. And it even operated at night. Like I said, 20 hours a day was the schedule for the operation of this dredge. This is a depiction of where the dredging was done. There were very careful, targeted decisions made on exactly where it was going to be operated, and for purposes of different depth and proximity to the dam and whatnot. So this shows you the pathway that the dredge was operated in September. This is an illustration of the water injection dredge, and I've described it a few times, but I think it's really great to see what's in effect a depiction of it. This is from Custom Dredge Works, the company that built the dredge. They're located here in Topeka, so it was really cool. So this particular apparatus was actually constructed by a Topeka operation. And as you can see, the 2 arms with the jet bar on the bottom, when it's not in operation, those are rolled up and up flush with the dredge. When they're operating, and they roll it down to the bottom and turn on the jets, and that's what it looks like. When this was being constructed at Custom Dredge Works here in town, some of us got to go see it while it was being built. And I remember we went over to Custom Dredge Works, we see the parking lot, we see the building of the office, and over on the side is this big red wall. And I'm like, okay, the dredge must be behind that wall. No, that was the dredge. It's huge. It was just pretty astonishing to me, the size of this particular apparatus. In general, what it's designed to do is to stir up the sediment so that it will create what's called a density current. And for reasons that get far more into engineering than I'm comfortable discussing, it develops a movement of sediment along the bottom, and then that sediment then flows out the bottom outtake of the dam. This is why it's being tested at Tuttle, because the dam is constructed that way. At other reservoirs, the outtake may be higher, like at John Redmond, so this kind of technology is not expected to work there, but that's why Tuttle's a good candidate for trying this out. Now, there are a few things I can show you as a result of that first dredging. We don't have all of the information revealed yet. The Corps of Engineers and the U.S. Geological Survey and a number of entities have done a lot of monitoring and testing, and they're compiling that data. They haven't yet released it, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but we do have some things we can show you and share with you. So if you can tell, and this is a little subtle, but there was at the Blue River near Manhattan, after the operation began, there was a visible change in the color of the water. And if you look at the graph down below, the turbidity level is what's that black line. So you can easily see the beginning of that was the beginning of the dredging operation. And then when it calms down again was when it was over. So it was making an impact with the turbidity of the water. Then in comparing the turbidity of the water when it reached Topeka, from January to the beginning of the operation of the WID, you can see some spikes there in turbidity. Those were caused by natural runoff events, big storms, that sort of thing. But at the very bottom, on the right, that black circle, that's caused by the WID. So you can see an actual impact on the turbidity that they were able to document. And then from the beginning, this particular graph shows the operation from September to the arrival of WID sediment in at the Topeka location. And again, the spike was from a natural runoff event at the Smoky Hill River, but the turbidity levels that are higher there than the normal over on the left side, those were caused by the WID. So we're definitely seeing impacts from that. There is much more to know. There has been much more studied. When are we going to find out the outcome of that? Well, the first opportunity we'll have, which I'm very excited about, is January 26 at 11 a.m. The Corps of Engineers will host a publicly available webinar with their results and findings from the first dredging operation. So they have set a date and a time for us to learn what all they learned from that. So I think that'll be very informative. And then, as I said, spring and summer, there are 2 more dredging operations, and then the final report is expected late this year into the next year. So before I move on to talk about grants, are there any questions about the water injection dredging?
Representative Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you have any preliminary results on the quality, water quality, the impact downstream from the dredging?
We do have some initial findings that showed that the water quality values did not ever exceed permitted values. So the specifics may be revealed on the 26th, but at least nothing exceeded or violated the permitted limits.
Okay. And I noticed you had the turbidity measurements at Topeka. How far downstream does it, how long does it take before that kind of gets back to a natural state? I mean, at Lawrence, Kansas City, did you do any measurements down that far?
They were doing measurements all along, I believe. And in terms of the time frame from one spot to the next, I would be happy to get that information for you.
Okay, just curious. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Pishney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Connie, following up with that question about the water quality, what about potential flood consequences downstream? Because it appears to me the silt is going downstream. Is that decreasing capacity in the stream so that there's more chance of flooding in those areas because the streams don't have as much capacity?
Well, that will be part of what is being studied, are all of those downstream impacts, so that's a good question. So water quality as well as the environmental impacts, what is it doing to the capacity downstream? How is it impacting, say, public water intakes downstream? Are they still able to operate effectively? So those are things that the data from that hasn't been revealed yet, but that's what we're looking forward to finding out.
I look forward to hearing that. And one follow-up to that, Mr. Chairman, then have the landowners and so forth downstream been a part of the conversation with regard to the release of silt from the reservoir?
The public water suppliers certainly have been part of the conversation. With the Kansas River being a navigable river, the landowners don't own the bed of the river, but there has been a lot of public outreach. There have been many public meetings, and the Corps of Engineers, as it shows in their next steps, anticipates a lot more stakeholder outreach. So there's been a lot of effort to make sure that everybody who's interested or impacted is aware and included in the conversation.
Representative Pickert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just encourage everybody on this committee, if you have a chance when they're in operations in the spring, go see this thing. It is huge and it's very impressive. So I didn't get to go on a ride while it was in operation, but we did get to go on it, the barge, and it's huge and it has all kinds of neat technology on it, and the people that are running it are happy to show it off too. So
I want the committee to understand that last summer, I requested 2 days of interim committee for the water committee. As it turned out, and I was hoping to go to Manhattan to watch the WID project. It was basically in late September. We had a lot of members that had recently gone to Ireland and back and the state fair and everything, and it didn't work out very well for us as a committee to meet then. I would ask you to try to reserve some time period. We get out, I believe, the 27th of March and come back 9th or something of April. I'm hoping the WID project, and I'm trying to coordinate so that we can have a water committee meeting over at Manhattan one day and then kind of follow these things downstream. We'll get a little more information than we would have gotten in September. I think this is an important project for the state of Kansas, but if you're trying to look at vacation time periods and stuff, I'm trying to give you a little bit of notice. I'd like to be on site and watch this thing and follow downstream and see what some of the impacts are. I was there while they were working or operating at that time period, and I heard one of the scientists say the water test results above the reservoir were actually of less quality than the ones downstream even during this process. Is that correct?
I'm not sure. I didn't hear what you heard.
So in that type of situation, if the dam had not been there at all, the natural stream flow coming down that way to our municipals here would actually been of less water quality, even though we were trying to move some of that sediment on. I think we're going to be intrigued by the numbers, oxygen levels and nitrates and everything else when we get a little more data here. So the 26th of January, where's the Corps of Engineers going to do this presentation?
It's an online webinar.
Yay. Okay. Any further questions? Representative Droege.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's not really a question. I was there when they were dredging. I was talking to one of the scientists, and so this is unofficial, but we were talking about sediment and water quality all the way to the state line, and he said they had no problem. I was concerned about dropping sediment on the curves or where the water slowed, and they said they had, it's just a 10-day run. They didn't have really a lot of data, didn't have the data analyzed, but they hadn't seen any of that. One of the things I found fascinating was something that I'd never thought of is the way we dam the runoff, and we're stopping sediment from going down the river, and we look at what we're doing to the Mississippi Delta. We're not getting the sediment in there, it's changing the estuary. And I thought that was a bit fascinating, that thinking about the whole flow of the water circulation on the North American continent or any other continent. I just thought I'd bring that up because it's not something that was in my thought process before.
Okay, and that sort of leads me to remind the committee, thank you for that, that the scope and the importance of this project is really far even beyond Kansas. That not only are we the first entity anywhere to be trying this technology, but if it works, if it's helpful, if it's a helpful tool, then the eyes of the nation are on this, and there are eyes on this internationally, because we are the first to come up with a way that seems promising to try to deal with reservoir sedimentation. It's just a problem that hasn't been able to really have a lot of tools developed yet, and Kansas is really out front and taking a leadership role, and it's really, really exciting to see, and it's for reasons like that, Representative, because the impacts of what this can mean are far beyond Kansas borders. So, pretty exciting.
The engineers had a 1 day of discussion about this kind of at the very beginning, and of the 80 PhDs in the room, I'd say half of them were from out of the state of Kansas. There was a lot of interest from the Pacific Northwest and some of the things that they have going on. They talked about the Mekong Delta in Vietnam and Laos as they've put dams in above for municipal water or flood control. That delta is actually shrinking, and they're losing agricultural production that's been raising rice. They talk about a starved river, one that doesn't have sediment in it, tends to carve the banks and create more erosion downstream than if it's currently carrying a load of sediment with it. It changed some of my thinking on what was going on here, but there were representatives from the Netherlands, several foreign countries, and a lot of different states here in the United States to see if this project might apply to some of the things that they're working on.
Another thing I thought was interesting, that people may not know this, but this dredge, once they figure everything out, and the water flow in the lake and the density of the floor and how they can stir up that sediment and move it, it'll eventually work like a Roomba. There'll only be guards on the surface. It won't be anybody really operating the dredge. And I thought that was fascinating, so that you can just put this thing in rotation so it does the dredging. And obviously you can't dredge all the time because you'll run out of water in the lake. But you dredge on these repeated bouts and keep your basin close to the outlet cleared out as much as possible. I think it's fascinating, but a lot of people, I don't think, realized how this becomes a routine thing throughout the continuation of the lake life. Thank you.
Well, the Corps kind of described that Tuttle Creek Dam was put in '62 with a 60-year life, and we're 63, 64 years from that time period. It was built with double the capacity necessary or anticipated need, and it's currently, what, Connie? Half. So we're at a point where we would like to keep this capacity, and that's the hope that this can, not that we're going to remove all the sediment from the current reservoir, but we'll maintain what we currently have for the future at a far more economical situation than John Redmond was dredged in 2018 at the cost of $20 million, I believe.
Okay, 2016. Okay. Okay, yeah.
So
it's-
we're looking at what we can do now to maintain things for the future at a far more economical price, basically. But
Oh, it's so much more economical, and it's not a one-time finite fix. Conventional dredging is a temporary fix. If you just take sediment out and do nothing about it coming in, it's just going to fill back in again. So this is at least something that can be an ongoing tool. That would be.
Representative Pickard?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Connie, when the Corps of Engineers has their webinar, we're going to be in the House session. Is there any way it can be recorded and made available to this committee?
I would assume it will be.
Could you let us know?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely, yeah.
Representative Fairchild?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned that the previous dredging operation costed $20 million, but this was cheaper. I was just wondering, was it mentioned how much this operation costs, what the cost of it is?
The total was 9.1 for this demonstration project. And this, as I said, the state, thank you all very much, contributed $2 million to that. The Corps took the lion's share of the cost, but I know it may not happen very often that you have very visible, hands-on, concrete results from the work that you do and the decisions you make. This is not abstract. This is one that I think you can take a lot of pride in because it's a real thing, it's actually happening, and in the real world, we are hopeful it will really make a difference. So I think you should all be proud of that fact. Maybe that doesn't happen for you all that often, so.
It's my understanding the 9.1 billion or million is basically a lot of it's the purchase of the equipment and a lot of testing equipment for downstream also. This project's not just on the lake, it's what happens downstream. There would be some value to that. It's going to be interesting to see what they anticipate the annual cost would be for this process to continue on in the future. If it's a million or something, that's something that we need to look at. But we'll find out more.
Right, and those, some of those decisions will be, does the Corps own it? Does the state own it? Does the Corps operate it? Does, you know, those are all questions to be answered if this proves to be a feasible tool.
Any further questions? Seeing none?
Okay, great.
Go ahead.
Let's talk about grants. So, in line with saying thank you very much, and you're doing work that really matters and makes a difference in the real world, our 2302 grant program is such a thing. We have, as you may recall, at the Water Office, the technical assistance grants and the water projects grants. They were created by House Bill 2302 with a 5-year sunset. So we have just finished the 3rd cycle of grant applications. And let's take a quick look at what administration of that looked like and what we had versus what we need. I know you've seen this kind of thing before or heard the numbers. So the first year, fiscal year 24, 309 applications asking for, combined, the two different kinds, asking for $380 million. We had 18 to give out. And you can see on this map, the dark blue dots are the awards we were able to give out, and the brownish dots are applications that we were not able to fund. So you can sort of get a depiction here of where the applications came from, as well as where they were awarded. One of the items in the matrix of evaluating applications is attempting something of a geographic balance, trying to at least kind of keep that in mind. So you can kind of see here, based on, you know, where most of the applications came in, is where most of the grants were awarded. The next year, year number 2, FY25, $233 million were requested, and we had $27 million to give out. So we had a boost, which is great, but we still had a lot that went wanting. So again, here you can see the blue dots were awards that were able to be made, and the brownish dots were those that were not able to be funded. And I might mention on both of these, the technical assistance grants tended to outnumber the water projects grants, and that may make sense when you realize that this entire grant program is targeted to small communities of 2,000 or less. So what do they need first? They need the expertise to know what to do, the engineering, the planning, the grant, you know, the fundamental groundwork that needs to happen before you actually ask for money for a project. So we are, as I said, we're currently in year 3, and application period this past year was from July through September. And based on preliminary data, there were 281 applications, 272 million requested, and 18 million available to award. So we continue to stay in that same that same comparison of how much incredible need there is out there versus how much we have to award. And that review process for that cycle is ongoing. To summarize the awards granted so far, which would be those first 2 years, these are the blue dots all put together, and it totaled benefiting 104 communities with $45 million able to be distributed to those communities for their needs. A couple of examples of awards that were given, and there were many, obviously many to highlight, but here are a couple of them. This is one, a technical assistance grant in Montgomery County, their rural water district number 9. They needed assistance preparing an engineering report to improve their drinking water distribution system. And so they needed to replace water lines, restore interconnections, and they had frequent main breaks resulting in water loss and potential contamination. So this technical assistance grant for this rural water district was to provide the money so they could get an engineering report to make a plan for how they were going to address this problem. An example of a water projects grant was the community of Cuba, and this was to rehabilitate an existing water tower, including exterior and interior renovations, and install frost proofing and an overflow pipe. And the need for this, I think, is pretty alarming. Their paint tests were testing positive for high lead levels in that water tower that everyone was relying on. And interior rust was creating additional contaminants. So their application highlighted that this was an area subjected to high poverty rates, and it was a disadvantaged community, particularly as compared to the rest of Kansas. So this is serving the exact purpose for which the grants were created, and this should provide clean, non-lead-filled water for Cuba. And as we're always updating our website and trying to provide more informative tools and more innovative ways to demonstrate information, if you use the QR code or go to our website, we've just created a video on the City of Protection and the help that we were able to give them based on their needs. So we couldn't get it to play in this format here, but it's cool. I've seen it. So I would encourage you to check that out. And likewise, we have an interactive map on our website where you can search all kinds of aspects about the grants, who got them, how much, what for. You can put in your own search tools, your own filters, and just play around with that. And there's a lot of good information contained on our website. And that would conclude what I had prepared to share with you, so I'm happy to stand for any more questions.
Representative Blex.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Connie, when a community receives a technical assistant grant, do they have any priority for a future, assuming they need the technical assistance to develop their project, do you have any process to where they receive a priority, or are they left hanging for umpteen years till they get in line with a project?
That's a tricky question, and I'm going to pass that off to our grant specialist, Victoria Asbury.
Hi, good morning, Victoria Asbury, Kansas Water Office. Yeah, that's a great question. So this third grant cycle is really the first time that we're facing that question because our first year awardees for technical assistance are closing out their technical assistance grants. It's a conversation we're currently having as we review grants, but we certainly don't want to leave communities that we've assisted with technical assistance without finishing that water project. We want to see that whole project to completion. So it's definitely I won't say a 100% guarantee that you'll get a water projects grant this cycle, but it will definitely enhance your application if you've received a technical assistance grant in a previous cycle.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Stogsdale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Very interesting presentation this morning. I'm just curious, are we getting any, it was concerning to me when I saw that we only have, it seems like, money enough to fund about 10% of the grants that are requested and so on. Are we getting any federal funding to help with any of this?
No, this is state funding.
Okay, so no federal grants or anything coming in?
No, these are not tied to federal grants. Now, people who are awarded the grants, they can use them as cost share for other grants. So if they've applied for a federal grant and they need to provide cost share money, they can use these grants as that. But there isn't any federal money that comes into this grant program.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Vaughn.
Good morning. Thank you, Connie, for this presentation. This is an issue I've been thinking a lot about in terms of the total outstanding need for upgrading public water supply systems, especially in rural towns that may not have capacity to do this themselves. Do you think that the requests that were unable to be funded is a good estimate of what that unmet need is, or do you think it's even bigger? And do you have any kind of estimate of how we might be able, what that amount might be in order to address these contamination issues across the state?
Well, in terms of the actual need for assistance, we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
There may be, my guess is, there probably are needs out there that for which grant applications did not come in for whatever reason. Maybe they didn't know about them, maybe they didn't fill it out, they didn't, whatever. My guess is that this is not a complete picture of the need, simply because, again, we don't know what we don't know in terms of the need out there. I would defer to KDHE in terms of the need for systems that are required to upgrade and what KDHE is working on and what they know in terms of the water quality concerns and the working with public water supply systems that they're aware of. So I would defer to KDHE on some of that information.
Thank you. Yeah, I definitely will follow up with them as well. But I think it definitely goes to show that there is a large outstanding need and that continuing to fund this program, in addition to maybe looking at additional options, low interest loans, other things like that might be needed to really solve this problem that I think will continue to be an ongoing issue. So.
And speaking of the loans, I'll remind the committee that under the water projects grants, there is a category of loan assistance where you can apply for the water projects grant to help pay off a loan you have with KDHE if it's one of two particular kinds of loans. And there are parameters for how you would qualify for that. And so some of those were awarded as well.
Thank you.
I guess I might comment that I believe over the last 3 years, there's been a better coordination between KDHE in their testing of municipal water quality and the water office as far as correlating some of these things together, where the KDHE seems like in the first year, and maybe Victoria could help me out here, there were 5 or 6 very small communities on a very sensitive list for their water quality, and that was some of the first communities that we actually helped fund. And so there's some coordination, and I think it's much better than it was 8-10 years ago. And I applaud Vijay did a very good job, and now Senator McGinn is doing that same type of work. And I think that's a huge improvement.
Yeah, and we do, Victoria and her team do coordinate with KDHE on these requests so that we need their expertise and their knowledge, and certainly regarding the loans that are outstanding and those kind of things. So yeah, there is a lot of communication back and forth.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much, Connie.
Thank you.
I believe now we have Don Bueller, the Chair of the Kansas Water Authority.
Good morning. Good morning, House Water. It's great to be back and to see you all. Beautiful day in Topeka. It's going to be like 60 degrees today, so we'll soak it in. Connie had some really great news to share. And I'm here as the chair of the Kansas Water Authority to represent the members of the Kansas Water Authority and the 14 regional advisory committees across the state of Kansas. There's about, in total, 150 people that I like to think of them as the boots on the ground when it comes to water. They're in their local communities, and they, their kids go to the local schools, and they go to the local church, and they sit around the diner and talk about water issues, and they're the folks that know what's happening, and they're a part of the state. So I'm here representing all of those folks today to share with you our annual report to the governor, the legislature, and the director of the water office. So I'm going to walk through this document with you. I think you all should have a copy. Beautiful annual report that the water office put together for us for our time today. Start off, and there's a table of contents, flip through. A letter from the chair is on the front left page. But if you turn to page 3, just to give you an update overview, these are the members of the Kansas Water Authority. You have the 13 voting members, which are all appointed, and then the ex officio members. So I think we've been through all of this before, so I won't spend a lot of time on it. But if you have any questions, be sure to reach out. But you can find here the information on the Water Authority members that are across the state. If you turn to page 4, there's a little bit of information about the regional advisory committees. We have these regional advisory committees are distributed across the state. The eastern side is more along the lines of watersheds, whereas the western part of the state is around the boundaries of the groundwater management districts. So we have 14 regional advisory committees, and these are the folks that are in your local communities working on water issues. We have also included a list of acronyms because we know that we are heavy on things like WID. We get asked that all the time because we throw it around, but all of those acronyms are on there. So I'm going to go to page 5, which is, we're going to start with the recommendations for state policy. I'll throw the first one up on the slide. I'll go ahead and talk about these for a minute while this gentleman's figuring this out for us. So policy recommendations, the first one that we have here on the screen in our report is secure future use water storage in Milford and Perry Lakes by paying off all of the remaining state debts to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So we can talk about that for a second. House Bill 2302 set aside, if you remember, $52 million to invest in treasury bonds and earned revenue until an appropriate time to pay off that debt. So this year, the Water Authority is recommending that we pay off the remaining debt as soon as possible to prevent more interest accruing on the debt and to assure access to the water storage. And this is primarily to meet increasing water use demands due to economic development. So we are concerned about the downstream needs for water into the future, and so we are making the recommendation to pay off that debt. Paying off these debts will lock in Kansas control of the state storage in Milford and Perry Lakes without incurring operation and maintenance costs until we call the water into service. Without paying these debts, the water storage could be used for out-of-state interests, such as navigation on the Missouri River. And the estimated payoff in April of 2026 would be $35 million versus the $52 million that is invested. All right, so we have these up on the screen. Thank you. So there are those numbers, just to give you a little more information. Are there any questions about this one before I move on to the next one? Because I know it's something that you all have talked about a lot. And of course, you set aside the $52 million in the treasury bonds. Okay. So we'll move on to the next one. The next policy recommendation that we have. It's an increased focus. Let me make sure this matches up with my slide deck. Yes, increased focus on best management practices, which are BMPs, another acronym, which benefit surface and groundwater quality. And the way that we do that is through scalable implementation strategies, targeted monitoring efforts for source identification, development of strategies and tools to evaluate the effectiveness of implementation efforts, and in areas of existing contamination, explore remediation practices to improve the quality of the contaminated water. So like, for example, I'll give you an example on the last one. We're talking about like the chloride plume in the Equus beds or the uranium in southwest Kansas. And our third main recommendation is that the state of Kansas should consider the feasibility and effectiveness of programs that incentivize the use of less water in the Ogallala Aquifer. These incentives would be earned by withdrawing less groundwater than previously withdrawn under existing water rights. It would differ from conventional incentive-based conservation programs, and the metric would be a measure of water physically left in the aquifer. So we have 3 committees on the Water Authority, and each committee worked on these throughout the year. And so our Ogallala and High Plains Aquifer Committee felt that this was the one of highest priority. However, if you look in the actual annual report, the paper copy, you'll see that there's a list of additional recommendations. Our committees felt so strongly about these additional recommendations that they just wanted to make sure that these were also included so that you would have some idea of the other things that our regional advisory committees are thinking about, and the Water Authority and our ex officios. These are things that collectively we all believe we should have as priorities, but we elevated these top 3, one from each of the main guiding principles for the state water plan. So we have one for reservoirs, one for water quality, and one for the High Plains Aquifer. But down below, you'll see additional recommendations. So I won't go through those and read them here, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. All right, so we'll slip over to pages 6 and 7. I know there's a lot of information here. Most of this you all have seen before. So we have the State Water Plan Fund estimates. Just to kind of recap the money that goes into the State Water Plan Fund. Then down at the bottom is just a graphic to help kind of show that information graphically. So if you see how it shows how much of this, the State Water Plan Fund revenue estimates go into stock water fees, pollution fines, pesticides. It's just trying to give you an information, a general idea of all of that. And then you can see the portion that's the State General Fund. On the right are the State Water Plan Fund budget recommendations. So if you look at the last three columns, those are the FY27. So we have the adjusted base, and then the enhanced recommendations, which we will talk about on this next slide, and then the total around just a little over 60 million. So if we turn to page 8, I think I'll just spend a moment here and talk for a moment about budget enhancement recommendations. I think it's really important to always bring back to the legislature everything that the Water Authority and the regional advisory committees are thinking about, no matter whether or not we think there's a chance of them being funded or not. We think it's important that you know the areas that we feel have the greatest concern, and that we feel like we really need to focus more revenue, more spending into those categories to try and move the needle on these water projects. So the enhancement portion of this is us adding in the things that we think need more attention in the State Water Plan. So irrigation technology, this is a current program, but we see a need out there to increase the funding for that program. We are getting a lot of requests for that technology. Water resources cost share and the aid to conservation districts. There are some narratives in this section that provide more information, but the aid to conservation districts is to try and get them to that 2-to-1 state to local funding match. Secure and protect our reservoirs at 1.5 million. And then the next one, 1.5 million under the reservoir sediment management initiatives. So this portion here, the 1.5 million, is the second half of the dollars needed to do the hydrosuction project at John Redmond Reservoir. And then it's also, this line item would be for future reservoir sedimentation projects like the Tuttle Creek water injection dredging technology or hydrosuction. I think Connie mentioned earlier that not all reservoirs are created the same. They're not built the same. They don't have the same outflow. And so the technology and what type of technology you use to try and move that sediment is not the same. And so in this case, John Redmond Reservoir, this hydrosuction technology is a better technology for this reservoir than the water injection dredging that was used at Tuttle Creek. So that's why this is listed here. For improved water quality, there are dollars in here for contamination remediation because we have a lot of orphan sites that need to be dealt with that are really old. And our dear friend Leo Henning, who retired, he used to say, we got a quick kick in the can on that one, and we need to start dealing with these contamination sites and remediating those. So we have additional dollars in the budget for that. The non-point source program, there's a little bit added for that program to ramp up some needs that they have at KDHE. The local environmental protection program, this is for like failed septic tanks, additional dollars into that program. And then the big ticket item is the Equisbeds chloride plume. I think all of you have heard the Water Authority and the regional advisory committees, and even in your own discussions, talk about this problem. And it's been going on for a very long time. I would probably have to ask the Water Office how many decades. It's probably been coming up on a century. Yes, so maybe it's time that we started making recommendations, that we start to put some dollars towards fixing this problem. So we put dollars into the enhanced budget this year to try and let you know how important we think this is and that it needs to be elevated in our eyes. Under resiliency, dam construction rehabilitation, we added some additional dollars in there. I know Earl Lewis is going to be here on Thursday, and I'm sure he'll talk to you more about dam construction rehabilitation. It's an ongoing problem across the state. Water planning and project development, this is like regional planning and project pipeline development. It's something that we've been talking about for the last at least year, maybe a little longer. And those are some additional dollars that the Water Authority and Regional Advisory Committee thought that we needed to put into this program to get it moving faster. And the last one, this recommendation came in last year as well. This is for KDHE to add district office technical assistance staff. They have a real shortage across the state with technical staff. So those are the additional budget recommendations, enhancement recommendations from your 150 some odd member regional advisory committees and water authority. So if we go through the rest of the report, I'm not going to go through it in detail, but it just gives you an update. So on pages 10 and 11, this is the investment highlights overview. So it kind of gives you an idea on the right, the State Water Plan Fund programs that were funded in 2025. And then the circular graphic at the bottom to give you an idea of what types of programs were funded so that you can see visually where those dollars went. If you go to pages 12 and 13, this is an overview of where those line items were spent on the Conserve and Extend the High Plains portion of the State Water Plan Fund. And moving on, pages 14 and 15 is all about reservoirs. You'll see, of course, the great photos from the water injection dredging project. I will echo that if you have the opportunity to go and see that process in person, it's really eye-opening to see how that technology works. The next pages, 16 and 17, are improve the state's water quality. So these are where dollars were spent for improving the state's water quality. And then page 18, increase awareness of Kansas water resources. This is our educational component. And you remember these are the 5 guiding principles of the State Water Plan. That's how these are organized. So we're on principle number 4 here with increase awareness of Kansas resources. And then our last guiding principle, reduce our vulnerability to extreme events. And it talks about the HB 2302 grant program and some other programs as well. So that is the entirety of our annual report to the governor and the legislature. And we had a really successful year, thanks in part to the legislature for funding the State Water Plan again. Thank you very much for your continued support and your enhancement support of projects across the state. We've been very successful this year. The water injection dredging project has been a real highlight. It's been on the radar of our folks for quite a few years. It took some time to get it to this point, but it's been really wonderful to see just the preliminary results of the project, and we're looking forward to the next 2 phases to see how those phases go and the questions that are answered. But it's really been a great project to work through as a volunteer on a water authority board. So with that, sir, do you have any questions for me?
Yes, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If we could drop back just a little bit to this policy recommendation for payoff of the stored water. There was an estimated payoff of about $35 million, and there was 52 million put into treasury bonds to cover that debt. Do you know if your recommendation was to pay for that out of that invested money, or was this new general fund money that you were requesting?
The former, it is to pay the 35 million out of the 52 million. That's what we're recommending. So it's not new state general fund money, no.
Do you know what the interest rate we're paying now on the borrowed money from the federal government versus what we're getting from the treasury bonds?
May I ask the water office, sir?
So I appreciate the question and the opportunity to try and explain this. The 52 million was set aside to pay off the debt as it was estimated at that time. And it was thought at that time, the legislature decided, well, the interest rate that we could earn on that money is higher than the interest rate we owe, so we're going to invest it for now and then pay the debts off later. In the meantime, we were able to secure a change in the federal law for the interest rate that we owed. So it went from compound to simple interest. So suddenly, the debt that we owed on Milford and Perry was 30, it changes all the time, but basically, that's how we end up with 35 instead of the 52. So we now owe a lot less than we thought we were going to owe because we got the interest rates changed. And we also have a new fact that didn't exist before, and that is we finally managed to get in writing from the Corps of Engineers that if we were to pay the debt off early, that operation and maintenance costs that are typically our share would not kick in until we called it into service. So we could pay it off, not have a contract on it, not need to use the water yet, and not have to pay O&M costs right away. So those two facts make this a really fortuitous time to go ahead and pay the debts off, as well as there is no guarantee that that money would actually be used to pay off the debts. As you know, as legislators, if there's money, it's never safe. And so the need to preserve what we have in hand, what's right in front of us in terms of guaranteeing more water supply at a time when droughts are increasing and more economic development is trying to come into the state, it would seem to be the most prudent thing to do, to go ahead and lock in that water supply so that the state of Kansas has control over it, not the feds, and not to the benefit of other states. And it can't be, once we paid for it, they can't release it downstream. They can't use it for navigation. It can't, they don't have control over it. It's ours. So that's why this is coming up now, and that's why the Water Authority had this policy recommendation to pay it off now, because we owe a lot less than we did. We need the control of the water, and if anybody's looking into the future at all, water supplies are not going to increase. They're going to get more challenging. So let's go ahead and lock in for the state an opportunity for water supply that we have right there, that we have the money to pay for right now. And it's less than we thought it was going to be. So I hope that helps.
Representative Gardner, I have some information on this. In '23, when we passed this bill, one of the reservoirs was payment due in 2032 and the other in 2040, I believe. And the interest rate on one was about 3.2% and the other one was approaching 4%. Yeah. Those were like 60-year contracts. So we had a contract with the Corps of Engineers to buy what water we needed at that price. And initially we passed the bill to do that, and then we found out as it went through the Senate, a really good idea to arbitrage this money. So we put it in the Treasury Department, and we're garnering 2% is what we anticipated at that time. So 2% on the 52 million would make another $1 million per year in interest, and that 6% was going to be higher than our 3.2 and our 4. So that was the reason to arbitrage. And it was put there with the intent that this money could be pulled out to pay for those reservoirs. After that, we found out the interest rate, we could get a change from the federal government on that contract from compound to simple, which saved a tremendous amount of money. And this last year, in '25, we withdrew through the appropriations process 11 million from that fund, and it had grown to about 56, 58 million.
I think that's right.
We withdrew 11, and with the intent of adding that to water, we were able to put 7 million that direction to enhance the water office funding for this current year. The other, whatever, 4 million, you can determine that. But we have the funding there, and there's the concern that we need to take control of it, but especially the determination that we don't have to start paying maintenance until we ask for the water. It's advantageous to us at this time to probably do that. That's the numbers as I understand them.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and Matt was providing me with the interest rates that keep disappearing on his phone, but it's under 3% on one and under 4% on another. And yes, these are contracts we have to pay off. We don't have a choice. We can't renegotiate. The Corps of Engineers does not do that. So by the time they're due, we have to pay them off. And with any interest-bearing debt and interest-incurring debt, the sooner you pay it off, the less you have to pay. And so it just, to me, seems like an absolute no-brainer. And seeing every other state west of here and many east of here that are struggling with water supply issues going into the future, to me, this would be something that other states would be given their right arm for. Is we have a contract, all we got to do is pay it off and the water's ours. And we have to pay it ultimately anyway, and it's going to cost more if we wait. And if we have it, then we have more flexibility to make decisions on economic development or cities growing or whatever advancement we maybe want to do. Until we pay for it, we don't get to make those decisions. And that isn't a quick process even to pay it off. It takes months to go through the Corps of Engineers process to do it. But I'm glad the Water Authority made this their top priority from a reservoir standpoint, because from my point of view, it's a no-brainer. It's an absolute no-brainer. So, but, and again, as you said, Chairman Minix, there was money taken out last year that did not all go to water. And we still have enough to pay this debt off. But it's not protected and it's not guaranteed. So at a time when maybe there will be others looking to find money where they can, I think we ought to get ahead of it. But that's up to your sound judgment.
I would welcome a lot of help near the end of session if we have, we grew the fund to about 57, 58 million. We took out 11 last year. Let's say we have 46 million, and the cost to pay off these reservoirs is 39. I would love to protect the difference there and keep that within the water area, because we have absolute needs. You see what the municipal funds, if we get 300 million in applications for 26 million, there's the need to keep it here, and I'd love to protect it here. That's what it was originally appropriated for and put aside in the Treasury Fund. Any further questions? Hopefully we can all go see this wood project in late March or the first few days of April. There's 2 engines on that thing. I believe they're John Deere engines that put out 35,000 gallon a minute that get forced through those flat fan nozzles on the boom underneath that thing, and that's what's stirring that sediment up. That's a lot of water movement. They don't have to lift it. They're just pulling it from right underneath the barge, running it through those pumps, and at a tremendous pressure. It's an impressive project to go watch. Any more questions for Dawn? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate the opportunity.
We do have a little bit of time left. I'm curious to know if members of the committee have had any strong input from constituents on things they would like to see happen or situations in your area. If anyone wants to volunteer some comments. Representative Vaughn?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think probably all of us have been hearing a lot more about data centers. I think they're, obviously, I think personally, and I think, people in the state want to support business and the future of business, and AI is certainly part of the future, but I think there are definite concerns about how quickly data centers are going in, what the natural resource impact is. In particular for us, I think the impact on water resources, is that sustainable? And how do people feel about those data centers in their communities? Are there places that are better suited than others, et cetera? So I think that's something, I don't know how other committee members feel or what they're hearing, but I would at least be interested in potentially having a hearing on that topic, learning more about it, and what the state of that is currently in Kansas.
Representative Featherston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I concur. I'm hearing those same concerns from my constituents, in addition to how these centers might be driving up the cost of energy, which is not our area, but people are really concerned.
Representative Simmons?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I agree. I heard from my constituents from both parties, actually, concerns about data centers and how quickly the state is maybe leaning into them. So I think anything we can do to ensure that we're not going to be experiencing unforeseen consequences down the line, our constituents would appreciate, at least in my district. Thank you.
Representative Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My district is just down the river from John Redmond Reservoir, and I grew up just above John Redmond Reservoir, so I'm in the middle of that deal. There's a lot of concern in my district from ag producers about, and other people, about the effects of turning loose that much silt coming down the river. And so, I did attend the same conference that the chairman was talking about. I was there by Zoom, and I learned a lot of things that have really helped me in communicating with people about the positive things about moving that silt on down. And so I think that, going forward, it'd be very helpful to me to, and I do appreciate what has been presented here today, but, educating the public, particularly those involved with production agriculture, and also those concerned about the, the ecology of the river as it goes down from these reservoirs. Some help in getting accurate information out to the public is, I think, going to be very helpful.
Representative Blex.
Thank you. I've been getting a lot of complaints from constituents on the rural water distribution systems. Most of them are in the 50, 60 years aging, and the cost is very high, and it seems like delivery is becoming more of a problem with those rural water districts all over my district, and getting a lot of contacts. Some cases, it's lack of transparency of the board. where one or two big users seem to get the lion's share of the water, and pressure in other areas is down to near 20, which is the cutoff date, and lack of response, and even getting bylaws. So I've kind of had a bunch of those in the last several months, and most of them is certainly the cost of renovation. Thank you.
Representative Droege.
I'd like to concur with Representative Black's. The rural water guy talked to me quite a bit. He says the age of the aging water distribution system is kind of falling apart, and he says he just constantly chasing down the leaks, and when you find one leak and then try to fix it, you have problems with the adjacent pipe, and it creates real problems. So that, as Representative Black said, we've got this aging water system that's going to have to be replaced somewhere.
Attending the Governor's Water Conference, I found some interesting things that I picked up there in Nebraska. Their natural resource districts encourage agriculture to reduce their use of nitrogen fertilizer. Along the Platte River, they take a sample of the water besides taking soil samples, and if they're going to irrigate that crop under a center pivot with alluvial water from the river, they can reduce the amount of nitrogen that they apply, grows the same crop because they're receiving nitrates through the watering system. We don't have a program here in the state of Kansas, which, and they've actually seen some of the nitrate levels along the Platte River reduce. So by the time you run that nitrogen through a plant and photosynthesis, you're doing something positive. It actually lowers the input costs for the agricultural farmer, and you're getting the use of that. I'd love to see the Department of Agriculture come up with some type of program here in the state of Kansas. I believe nitrate, water quality, all across the state is a problem. It's something that we need to work on here in the future. I think they're way ahead of us by 20 or 30 years. It makes all kinds of sense. In my area, the GMDs out west, the Western 3 GMDs are a little bit concerned. The RCPP money from the feds that was supposed to come to the state, I believe that project is, or the funding is not going to come. So the Division of Conservation put up basically $25 million to do the same thing in exchange for what the federal money was going to be. That's coming from the state. They've hired some technicians. They've looked at center pivots. They've looked at irrigation systems and energy. They're coming up with some extremely good ideas. I had Lee Wheeler look at the center pivots on my particular land a year and a half or two ago. It was eye-opening, and we did a really good job of distributing water at a very small level, but we could get some energy savings. So if we could save $14,000 a year on my little farm on 2 pivots, that's highly beneficial, I believe. Representative Stocksdale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's real positive in my district, and my district's totally urban, that we hold a monthly forum for constituents, and this will be our 62nd in a row month for a meeting with these constituents. And in eastern Kansas, of course, we have a lot of interest in the drinking water and surface water and that sort of thing. But I'll tell you, this is the one subject that all of our constituents seem totally in agreement on, that this is a statewide program, that we have to support the folks in western Kansas every bit as much as in eastern Kansas. And I think if we're going to make any progress on this issue, we're going to have statewide support for that sort of thing. And I think it's certainly, from the people that I've met with in Johnson County, they're 100% in favor of that.
Representative Vaughn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One more thing that isn't necessarily as applicable to Johnson County, but that I think is an emerging trend and I would love to learn more about. We have some awesome large-scale water reuse projects that are going into western Kansas and Dodge City, potentially, and in Garden City. And I think water reuse for water supply in general will be really important to the future of western Kansas. So I'd just be curious for an update on those projects, how we can support water reuse, the state of kind of those regulations, if any changes need to be made. But I think that's a definite trend in a positive direction for our state, so I'd be interested in learning more about that.
City Pickard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to tag on to that, Lindsay, Wichita is planning a reuse program, and in fact, we do have a bill for that that'll be coming up here soon.
We believe we're going to get a presentation on that on Thursday. And Thursday we'll also have Earl Lewis and Lane Letourneau with the Division of Water Resources. Next Tuesday, I haven't fully set the agenda for it, a week from today, but on Thursday, what was it, Tony? We're going to try to work this 24 bill. We'll have public testimony on that at that time. And I'm trying to get as many bills as we can get moved as early as possible in this short time frame that we have for a committee. We only have 10 meeting dates. I have 5 GMDs to report. I know of at least 5 bills, and I think I've heard of 2 more today. That's 7 bills that we need to have testimony on and vote on those bills, and the GMDs will be in early February to give their annual report to us. So between now and turnaround, anticipate that we're going to use most of our time period on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much, and we'll see you on Thursday morning.